Hey guys, this week on the Betterhumanology podcast, we have Brian Mackenzie, the founder of CrossFit Endurance and New York Times best-selling author of Power, Speed, and Endurance and Unbreakable Runner.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Before we hop into the podcast, I wanted to say go ahead and head over to betterhumanology.com, sign up for a free membership, and get access to our daily workouts, training programs, courses, and a whole lot more. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and a positive comment, and much appreciated. Thanks. All right, let's talk to Brian. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now?
I got into training people probably in 2001, 2000, and preceding that, I was more or less a short course swimmer, sprinter, and at the same time I got involved with training people or coaching. I also decided to start challenging myself via triathlon and endurance sports. That said, I had a minor background in powerlifting, things like that, prior to that stuff, as my father is still a powerlifter today. So I had some background in strength and conditioning via the powerlifting movement, and having a garage gym from a very young age, until, as of today. That said, I, got through the endurance stuff and did fairly decent. I never had hopes or never thought I was going to be some sort of elite level endurance athlete. I just enjoyed doing the stuff, especially the ultra marathoning, which is what I got into after triathlon. Triathlon got a little bit cultish for me, which I caught on to. Not that CrossFit doesn't get cultish, but right. As it does, I tend to veer away from stuff like that once I understand I'm kind of moving that direction. But needless to say, ultramarathoning is cultish itself too. It's just a much smaller movement. It's much bigger today than it was when I got involved with it. And even prior to me getting involved with it, there was really very, very few people doing it. I think the numbers were in the 10,000 or so. Worldwide when I got involved, which that's far exceeding now. But at any rate, we more or less, through my career more or less evolved via learning how to introduce strength and conditioning and skill training to endurance sports. And that was how I kind of got to where I got and what I'm doing.
Okay, that's great. And yeah, I think you've kind of been a trailblazer in the world of endurance by, kind of taking a different approach and all the stuff that you have at CrossFit Endurance. I wanted to get your thoughts on, the traditional volume-based training for things like marathons and triathlons compared to kind of what you program and what you do now. I
think I appreciate saying that I was a trailblazer. My thing is that, I was actually a long, slow distance person. I enjoyed going out and just running for long periods of time or riding for long periods of time. I never really swam for long periods of time. But even though my background was swimming, we would run long and ride long. And I enjoyed doing that stuff. I enjoyed riding my bike from Orange County out to Palomar Mountain in San Diego, which was one of the things we would do, and a lot of people still do today. That's like a 6-7 hour ride.
Wow.
So it wasn't that I wasn't not doing these sort of things, but what we found was that we just were getting so beat up and so tore up, and the body was just not recovering. And the understanding of that stuff really started to resonate when I started trying to reintroduce some strength and conditioning work, and I was just so weak and so busted up that I had to really retrain a lot of that stuff. And so we started to do that, and I caught a lot of flack for a lot of the stuff we did in the early days and still catch a little bit today. But the fact is nobody was doing what we were doing back then, not to the degree that we were. And that said, a lot of people want to challenge a lot of things and talk negatively about what we've done. But the fact is we've been part of the whole movement. It's kind of shifted the thought process of rethinking endurance sports and what is healthy and what isn't. I mean, I just read an article on how in an endurance forum on an endurance website that maybe endurance athletes should start thinking about taking protein in post-training and at night, because that's what bodybuilders and lifters do. And it's like, really? This is we've been doing this stuff for so long, and it's so funny because people are so anti what we've done because it was almost like it was challenging what they were doing. And the fact is I've never really, it's not that I've challenged what people are doing. It's just we introduced a methodology that differed from what other people were doing, and people who bleed for something or are in a cult tend to take things like that as a threat. And I think that's more or less why things have been so polarized with what we've done. But in essence, we've also helped a lot of people. I mean, in the thousands on, hey, I hated running, or I was just busted up runner or cyclist or swimmer, and now I'm very healthy at what it is I'm doing. And, we've actually even, I've been in sport, it's not just, this isn't just relegated to endurance sports. I mean, I work with surfers, I've worked with football players, soccer players, you name it. It just keeps going and going and going. And it's the same thing. It's just, when we start to look at things as a skill and start to build people up with strength and conditioning, it changes everything. So anyway.
No, I mean, that's great. And you mentioned, kind of your transition into, strength training and how your body was kind of beat up. What do you think for the endurance athlete, the best way to incorporate strength training is? I mean, should they approach it just like a power lifter? Should they be doing something a little bit different? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, my opinion, and this doesn't make me right, which is something I've become grossly aware of over the last, probably 5 years more so than in the last decade. But, my opinion is that if you're going to actually do strength and conditioning, you need to do strength and conditioning. Powerlifting will get you results, but being a power lifter and / endurance athlete is not going to get you the best results. Right. I've not seen that. A lot of people get really fixated on getting really strong and doing that. We even see this within the CrossFit, world, where people have fixated largely on big strength biases versus endurance biases, where now we start to see everybody starting to look towards that endurance bias because they know they're missing a lot of that aerobic base or that understanding of how to work in the monostructural movement, at long, slow distance. And that is something that will, it can hinder people. That said, we had some success in the early days with just powerlifting and applying to endurance sports, but we had better results following CrossFit as the way we see CrossFit. I look at CrossFit as more or less the greatest athletic screen that's ever been devised, and that is because I can have you go into a workout, and if you can't actually do that workout, that explains something to me about something that's going to happen to you within your sport-specific world, maybe not right now, but somewhere down the road. So that being said, CrossFit done right will have you lifting heavy weights. It'll also have you lifting light weights. It'll also have you doing gymnastics movements, and it's also going to have you sprinting, and it's also going to have you going long, slow distance. So that's why I think it's arguably the better of anything.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that. And how about a diet? I mean, if you want to be doing ultra marathons and all of that stuff, what kind of diet are you going to recommend for someone? They're training, your methodology, but what do you recommend for their diet?
I don't think there's one diet that fits all. I do think, though, that the principles based around the paleo diet are probably the most sound. I do believe we're omnivores. Some people will thrive more on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet. Others will thrive on eating lots of red meat. Most people I know have some sort of lactose intolerance. They also have some form of celiac where they have some form of gluten allergy, and there's probably a ton of other shit that they probably don't know that they have some sort of allergy or pathology to, that would have them not gaining the most out of their diet. That being said, following the principles of what the paleo diet is designed for, by removing most of those things that you could have an allergy to, and from there actually having allergy tests done with blood work, having blood work done to understand like what it is you've got going on, from things like Wellness FX, or even, we have a doc on staff that we send our athletes to so that we can actually run hormonal profiles on them to understand what's going on with them. If you don't have that stuff done, you don't have any idea what you should be taking or how you should be eating. And that's the weirdest thing to me. The oddest thing to me is that people want to know what supplements I take. And that has no bearing on what it is you should be taking.
Right.
Other than the fact that we created a product like 3 Fuel, which is for not only that protein breakdown, but also for fueling ourselves without having to use something that has sugar in it. And, we're finally on this paradigm shift where people are really starting to grasp the concept of, oh, sugar is bad even if I'm an athlete. And, there's plenty of athletes who think they can get away with it, and they're young enough to believe that. I typically don't run into athletes who are in their later years who actually buy into that anymore, and that's for good reason. But that being said, that was why we created 3 Fuel, was because we were looking for something that would actually help us recover faster and would allow us to eat real food more consistently. And if you're training, a lot, if you're training more than 2 times a day, you're going to actually need to do something like that. Other than that, I think you need to get blood work done, and understand what it is you're deficient in and how you need to be eating. But, I've never seen anybody complain who actually eats a clean diet that has a ton of vegetables, a little bit of fruit, the meat is clean, whether they've hunted that meat or whether they've got that from a grass-fed or pastured source. It's you don't hear people complaining about their lives or what's going on in them when they eat that way, versus when we see people who aren't eating that way, they tend to have a lot more problems going on.
Okay. And since we're kind of on that topic, and you already mentioned it, but I would like to get a little more info, if you would, about 3 Fuel. I know I got to try it out, grabbed a bag at the athlete cell camp I attended that you put on in Cookville, but can you tell the listeners a little bit more about 3 Fuel and what makes it different from other supplements out there?
Yeah, we found that we didn't want to take sugar anymore, and that was typically what everybody was still using, whether that was fruit or whether that was some sort of gel of some sort that was from some broken down fruit or some other honey or whatever. Everything was a high glycemic carbohydrate because people wanted to believe that was our number one fuel source, when in essence our number one fuel source is fat. You only have 2,000 kcals in your body at any one time of glycogen, which is an immediately usable fuel source, versus 40,000 calories roughly of fat that your body has an endless supply of. And the fact that you could last almost 30 days without dying of starvation is a telltale sign that you have an endless supply of energy that you really want to utilize. So we developed 3 Fuel because, one, we were looking to recover faster. We knew about the protein intake and the body breaking down amino acids and having a quick access to recovery. So we found the fastest absorbing protein we could, which is a whey protein hydrolysate. The protein is also grass-fed, so most people, I would say 99.9999% of the human population will not have an allergy to our protein. You will, however, have an allergy to something that's a concentrate because it still has the lactose in it, things like that, where they've got more or less at 95% or 97% of the market. And I'm just making these numbers up, but that's roughly what we've seen and what I've experienced with people. So that's why we made the grass-fed whey protein hydrolysate, which is a fast absorbing protein, and it breaks down into amino acids, which allow the muscles and the tissue to rebuild themselves. It also is a way for your body, for your liver to break down the excess protein into glucose. Your body will. We also include a baby coconut milk, which is a medium chain fat, a triglyceride, which is an immediately usable fuel source. It takes a little bit more time than glycogen, but it's something that your body will not store. It will use as a fuel source. We then added this product called Thermocarb, which is a HTP waxy maize, and it sits about 32, I believe, on the glycemic index, which literally you're going to get more of a reaction out of the whey than you will the carb. So the carb takes about 3 hours to kick in. So it literally creates a glucose drip that happens in about 3 hours, where you've got the medium chain fat that kicks in and is an immediately usable fuel source, and the protein, which will break down fairly quickly after that. It's a never-ending fuel supply, more or less, that we created, but it's also a recovery agent. So we tend to have people take this product before they train, anywhere from 10 minutes to 2 hours before you work out, because it absorbs so quickly. It empties out of your gut pretty quick, so it doesn't sit in your stomach. I can literally take it as I'm warming up, prior to a workout, if I haven't eaten anything. If I had, and that's the big point right there, is that most people show up to work out in a fasted state versus showing up to work out when they've got something that's absorbing in their system so that they don't run out of fuel. So that's in essence why we created it.
Okay, that's really good. I mean, it sounds like you guys covered everything, and then sounds like a great product. I know I definitely did enjoy it when I got to try it out. All right, we're going to jump into the quickfire questions of the show, and this is where I'm just going to ask you, some questions about you and your opinion on things, and you just you can answer them quickly. You give an explanation if you want. It's up to you. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Hardest workout you've ever done?
Brian.
All right. In your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
I would say ice training.
Ice training?
Ice training.
Okay.
Being able to sit in an ice bath for 3 to 5 minutes if you've never done it.
Okay.
I would say it's between that and water training. The ability to go without oxygen and be in a place where you technically can get very, very claustrophobic. I think that challenges the mind in a way that really opens up doors to people that they wouldn't necessarily understand.
Okay. If you could train with any significant figure in history, who would it be and why?
I've trained with people that I've thought of like that. So it's
So you've worked out with some of the greats?
Yeah, I've worked out with people who I look to and who I look highly. I've more or less made friends with people who I've looked up to or looked at as people who I would want to understand more about.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
All right. If you could have only one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
A barbell.
All right. And this is the last question. And since the name of the podcast is Better Humanology, trying to get everyone's opinion who's on the show on how they want to become a better human. So the question for you, 100% open-ended, the best advice you have for becoming a better human.
Keep an open mind. That entails probably more humility than you're willing to experience. And when you feel like you're being tested with that, where you can quickly be closed off to something, regardless of what it is, that's where it's most important to keep an open mind.
That's awesome. You had that answer almost immediately. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I like that.
It's probably the one that I've I challenged myself most with, but that I've seen most of the people that I'm surrounded by challenged with as well.
I appreciate that. And
go ahead.
So, I mean, that wraps it up for us. But I do want the listeners to know what the best place is to learn more about you or what you're doing. Where could they go to find out more?
They could either go to Athlete Cell, CrossFit Endurance, or 3fuel.com. They're all .com.
Okay.
3fuel's 3FU3L.com. My Twitter handle is probably the easiest way to interact with me, or my Instagram, which is they're the same, which is I am unscared,
Okay.
and I'm fairly active on that stuff.
All right, man. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show and sharing your wealth of knowledge with everyone today. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, Brian.
All right.
Bye, man. Hey, guys. Thanks for listening to the Better Humanology podcast. If you want to know about any of the resources we talked about, head on over to betterhumanology.com and check out the podcast show notes. Likewise, we have betterhumanology.com/toolbox, where you can find every resource that we've ever talked about on the podcast. So go check it out. Until next time, here's to becoming a better human.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.